You didn't think that we would just let this trade idea go untold, right? Okay, maybe untold is the wrong way to say it because we've been making videos about this idea for a while now, but we recently had another article published by the folks on The Athletic and TSN that dives into this same idea. We're going back onto Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston's NHL Trade Matchmaker article, Part 1, from December 26. So this was a while ago. It was a little bit of a holiday special, I guess you could say. And I wanted to talk about one of the trade ideas that's included in this thought because Chris Johnston, hey, what do you say? It's only been Chris Johnston that we have been referring to from this series of articles. We haven't been talking about any of the Pierre LeBrun stuff, but we're talking about one of these Chris Johnston ideas because he goes out there and links the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens in some sort of a deal. We're not going to screenshot the Athletic piece, it's paid for material, so instead we're going over onto NHLTradeTalk.com. If you wanted to read the Athletic though, it's going to be available in the description, as is this piece. Maple Leafs and the Canadiens are linked in an exceedingly rare trade. The Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs rarely make trades because they are rivals. However, could a rare trade be in the works? Old Prof published this article on the same day as the Athletic post, and it says this: trades between the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs are exceedingly rare. Chris Johnston noted that the rivalry between these two iconic teams makes such deals even more uncommon. However, as the trade deadline approaches, it's becoming increasingly clear that a potential deal involving the Canadiens defenseman David Savard could make sense for both sides. And yes, that is the case. If you go over onto the article, you will see Chris Johnston predicting David Savard to heading over to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a pretty interesting thought. I don't think it's all too unique necessarily, considering the fact that David Savard's name has been linked to Toronto and Edmonton for a while now. I mean, Pierre LeBrun links Savard to Edmonton in this piece, so of course that's going to be interesting. But Chris Johnston predicts the Toronto Maple Leafs to make this trade mostly because of the other inadequacies on defense. Joni Hakanpää hasn't been able to play much, Connor Timmins has not really been as good as you could have expected, and there might even be some sort of a role for a guy like David Savard to maybe even play with a Mo Riley. Who really knows? I mean, if you head over to Montreal's game log, David Savard has been one of the more utilized players in this lineup. Of course, when he's in the lineup, he has missed a few games here and there with injury. But alongside of the common 17-ish minute time on ice games that you're getting with Savard, there are a few 20-plus minute games in there too, with one of them even going up to 21 minutes. With this in mind, though, let's head back over onto the article and read why a trade makes sense for the Maple Leafs. Toronto has made significant strides on the defensive side of the puck this season, but there are still some areas of concern. One of the critical questions is their third pairing. Summer signing Joni Hakanpää has been plagued by knee issues, playing only 2 games, while Connor Timmins' resurgence has provided a nice story. His skill might not be ideal for what the team's looking for. Enter David Savard, a 34-year-old right-shot demon with a wealth of experience, including a Stanley Cup championship with the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2020. Savard's playoff pedigree and steady physical presence would give Toronto a defensive depth they need to make a deep postseason push. As a right-handed shot, Savard would also balance the Maple Leafs' top 6 and potentially slot in alongside Mo Riley, giving Toronto a more stable and well-rounded decor. He's a pending UFA, and with the Canadiens already adding top 4 defenseman Alexandre Carrier, it seems likely that Savard's time in Montreal is ending. He represents an affordable option for the Maple Leafs who can contribute to the penalty kill and provide reliable depth without breaking the bank. His $3.5 million AAV wouldn't put too much strain on Toronto's cap situation, especially with the playoffs, and I'm going to even add more so if the Canadiens retain 50%. Now, this, of course, makes sense for Toronto. They get a better player, straight up. It's why Toronto has been a feeding ground for these sort of trade rumors already, especially when you think about David Savard's future. I mean, the guy doesn't necessarily have it all too guaranteed in Montreal, so is there a necessity for the Habs to make the best deal possible at the moment while they still have him? Sure, you can say that. And I would say that David Savard is more reliable than a Timmins and more sustainable in the lineup than a Joni Hakanpää too. Toronto could use some depth there, and I think Savard, they've played off against him quite a few times over the past few years that he has been in Montreal, so Toronto definitely knows what David Savard's game is about, they've seen him a lot, and also for the Canadiens, I guess they're not going to be too stupid in this either. They understand why this would make sense. Why the trade makes sense for Montreal, though, is also written about here in the article. From the Habs' perspective, moving Savard before the deadline makes sense given their current position in the standings. Montreal's in the midst of a rebuild, and the addition of a younger, more mobile defenseman like Carrier signals they're focusing on the future. On the other hand, Savard is 34 and a pending UFA. He is not part of the long-term plan. Trading David Savard to a team like Toronto in win-now mode would allow the Canadiens to recoup assets in return. While his play has dipped this season, likely due to Montreal's overall defensive struggles, his body of work, particularly in a more structured environment, is still attractive to playoff contending teams. For a team like Toronto looking to bolster its blue line for a Stanley Cup run, Savard could be a low-risk acquisition with the potential to make a meaningful impact. And that is exactly what we had seen a few years ago. When he was a Blue Jackets guy for so long, he ended up eliminating the Tampa Bay Lightning in that first-round sweep by Columbus a few years ago, and then the Lightning were like, screw that, he took us out, let's get him, and we'll win a cup with him in our lineup. And then he went over to Montreal the season after, the team that they beat in the Stanley Cup Finals. So David Savard obviously has had a pretty interesting story, but working his way up in Columbus, he fully came out of nowhere in the shadows to becoming a meaningful, defensively minded, shutdown, shot-blocking, at some points, offensively contributing defenseman. I mean, last season, he did have a pretty good points per game rating. He had 24 points in 60 games, which is actually pretty solid, and I think one of the best seasons he has ever had. Aside from his 36-point year back in 2014-15, literally 10 years ago when he was 24 years old. David Savard, now that I think about it, I mean, he's been playing in the NHL since 2011-2012. He was, what, 22 years old back then? Yeah, no, he really is a seasoned, grizzled vet. It's kind of weird even trying to envision David Savard as a 22-year-old. Anyways, for Toronto, this could make sense. If you wanted to talk about some younger guys the Leafs could send Montreal's way, there are some guys that I think would kind of fit the bill for Montreal. Of course, Easton Cowan, the triple R3 leg kick guy in the shootout, is a notable prospect. He's not a D-man, but I don't know if the Leafs would really be interested in sending him anywhere in a trade. Noah Chadwick's a guy that I think is interesting, not to mention some of the other players that they have drafted out of the NCAA. Hudson Malinowski is a guy that I think is also interesting. And heck, if you even wanted to get nasty with it, you wanted to go all full circle, why not Cedric Parekh? Would that not be one of the funniest ideas to go out there and accomplish? Okay, no, maybe that's a little bit too ironic. Anyways, if it's just a few draft picks or something, that could also work too. David Savard, I don't think is going to fetch too big of a return, but he already did get acquired by a first back in the day by Tampa Bay, so there might even be something in that territory if you're really trying to push your luck here. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, though. What do you think the trade return is on David Savard to Toronto, and what are your thoughts on Chris Johnston's assessment predicting this trade is going to go down? Both articles, the NHL Trade Talk piece and the Athletic piece, will be linked in the description below for your viewing pleasure, so go out there and give them their ad views, or pay for the Athletic if you don't already have it. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Savard over to Toronto, and this trade update as well? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.